Thank you, Mr. Jayaprakash and Ms. Jisma. Good afternoon, everyone. Before starting today's session, I would like to list out some points. This presentation is probably the continuation of yesterday's evening session delivered by Dr. MP Selvan. That is, this session is delivered under the assumption that the very basic architecture of microgrid is known to you. Of course, it was very clearly delivered by yesterday's speaker. Then the second point is 40% of the material of this presentation is taken from the course Power System Restructuring and Pricing delivered by me for the MTech Power System students. I know that some of my students are here, but this is essential content for the coverage of this particular topic. Now we'll start the session. Okay, so the topic is microgrid economics and local energy markets. This includes the cost and revenue aspects of different stakeholders of the microgrid, how they are benefited, both technically and financially. Then what are the opportunities of the end consumers as well as the operator in the microgrid. Okay, the contents of the presentation: the misconceptions on microgrid, then the local energy market frameworks, microgrid versus virtual power plant, network services in microgrid including V2G and G2V, objective formulation for microgrid optimal planning, peer-to-peer transactive energy markets and blockchain, and at last the summary. Some of the misconceptions on microgrid are listed out here. I have customers that equip themselves with PV and microgrid micro wind turbines, and I also own several small hydro and CHP plants, so I must have a microgrid. See, distributed generation is a distinct feature of microgrid, but the microgrid means more than passive tolerance of distributed generators. It needs active supervision, control, and optimization. Then the second statement is microgrids are full of intermittent renewable energy sources, so they must be really unreliable and easily subject to failures and total blackouts. That is also wrong. Because in addition to the intermittent renewable energy sources, we can have storage devices and even conventional small conventional micro sources, conventional fuel-based micro sources. So we have dispatchable sources in our hand for controlling the or achieving the generation demand balance. So a microgrid can offset renewable energy source fluctuations by its own storage units when islanded, or from the external generation reserves when grid connected. And the microgrid's capability of converting from grid connected to islanded mode actually improves the security of supply. Because if there is a fault in the grid, the system can be electrically isolated. That improves the security. Microgrids must be so expensive to build that the concept will be limited to field tests. Widespread financial support schemes for renewable energy sources and combined heat and power have already ensured the basic profitability of the present microgrid systems. And in future, again, the cost of renewable energy generation will become less, and it will be more profitable in future. It will be more commercially viable in the future. The microgrid controllers will force me to use my computer in office when there is enough sunshine and to switch on washing machine at home when the wind is blowing. As there is no control over the wind velocity and the sunshine, it does not mean that always our load should be switched on to balance the generation and demand. It's true that load is following the generation in microgrids in most of the cases. But we have storage devices, so by means of charging and discharging control, we can mitigate this particular barrier. overcome this particular barrier. A microgrid is such a totally new idea that system operators need to rebuild their entire network. Although extensive metering, communication, and control devices need to be installed in addition to the existing passive distribution system, it does not actually incur too much infrastructure costs on the network operator side. On contrary, a microgrid can actually defer investment costs for device replacement. How is it? Because if the net power flow through the line is reduced by means of local generation, then the infrastructure expansion cost could be made less, or we can defer the investment on the infrastructure expansion. Since I am the participant of microgrid, I will never have any supply interruptions. Smooth transition to islanding operation is only possible with large storage or generation redundancy within a microgrid. Thus, an islanded microgrid will shed unessential loads according to instantaneous amount of available resource. That means if the grid is disconnected, already if your solar panels and wind resources are running in the system, then suddenly if the grid is disconnected, there are chances that the generation may be much more when compared to the local load demand. So in that case, the storage has a big role in smoothing the generation demand balance. So if it cannot act in a fast manner, then we will be forced to shed some unessential loads based on a priority. Based on, emergency loads will not be shed, but other loads must be shed. That we'll see. Now, the microgrid concept is just another energy retailer's advertising trick to increase his income. Even if an end consumer chooses not to buy the photovoltaic panels on his rooftop or hold a share in the community-owned combined heat and power plant, he can still benefit from having more choices of energy supply and sharing carbon reduction credits in his bill. Because if there is some carbon emission cost for the entire microgrid, which is paid by the owner of the system, distribution system operator or the microgrid central controller, whoever. So according to the reduction in carbon emission, he may be incentivized. The owner of the microgrid may be incentivized. So a part of this incentive will be transmitted to the end consumers also. End consumers or prosumers. Yesterday, the definition of the term prosumer was already given. An entity who produces and consumes energy is known as a prosumer. He can have energy storage device, he can have rooftop solar PV, he has regular load demand also. So by this way, in this way, the benefit is more distributed among the end consumers and other stakeholders. What is not a microgrid? With the absence of load, there is no microgrid. There is no term microgrid. It is not valid. With the absence of micro sources, it is not valid. With the absence of monitoring and control, also it is not valid. If there is insufficient carbon credit, then also we cannot say that the microgrid has served its purpose. Now, coming to the local energy market frameworks. Let's see. Okay, the first one is the Dso Monopoly Model. In a Dso Monopoly Model, the complete microgrid is owned and operated by a single entity called Distribution System Operator or DSO. The retailer functions are also carried out by the Distribution System Operator. Retailer function in the sense it buys power from the local distributed energy sources, and it provides this power, or it sells this power to the end consumers. So this is the retailer function. So it acts as a third party basically. Now both integration and operation are undertaken by the DSO. technical and financial consequences of the microgrid are bared by the DSO. Then if an existing distribution system is converted to a microgrid by the investment of DSO in installing local energy resources, whatever be the consequences of this particular conversion, be it gain or loss, should be bared by the DSO or the distribution system operator. So you can see here in the block of DSO, under the block of DSO, you have backfeeder, micro generators, storage units, and local balancer. Local balancer, or the role of local balancer means local balancing role means the generation demand balancing inside the system. Then the backfeeding activity is pumping the excess power to the upstream grid. Upstream grid is of course associated with the wholesale market. That is why it is termed as wholesale market here. Now storage units are there, so charging and discharging controls should also be done properly. So we have passive loads and active loads. Active loads are basically loads which facilitate demand side management. They are flexible loads. Now the second market framework is the prosumer consortium model. The prosumer consortium model is found in regions with high retail electricity price, because if the retail electricity price is high, the prosumers will have to form a pool and install a community generation system from which they can have their loads satisfied from that source itself in a cheaper amount, or each individual can have his or her own local generation from which he can feed his own load demand. So basically there needs a financial support for this particular system because the end consumers or prosumers should be financially sound to install this particular local generation system or the pool of local generation. Then to meet their own demand at a lower, by this they will be able to meet their own demand at a lower cost, or to earn revenue by selling the power to the grid. So if the grid price is more, naturally the investors will try to earn more revenue by selling this power to the grid. So now compared to the DSO monopoly model, which we have discussed in the previous slide, what are the differences here? The benefit is more distributed here because it now spreads to the end consumer or the prosumer also. Then the economics and profitability are collective now, right? It's not only confined to the distribution system operator. Now it's, it has a broader spread. Then technical feasibility has to be a more critical consideration here, because when an existing microgrid is converted to a prosumer consortium, the main objective will be profit. So to get more profits, there are chances that they may neglect technical constraints or network constraints. So it has to be properly, we have to put stringent limits for the network parameter limits. So that part is carried out by the distribution system operator here. So here distribution system operator is outside. You can see the block of distribution system operator is outside. Everything else is under the local prosumer consortium. Now the third model is free or liberalized market model. In a free or liberalized market model, the microgrid planning and operation are driven by various motives: economic, environmental, and technical. For example, if we want the network quality to be very high, we encourage nearer sources from the substation, right? Because the loss will be less, voltage drop will be less. So we encourage nearer sources from the substation, and we discourage farther sources from the substation. But if the nearer sources are costly, it will violate the economic constraints. Hence, we need a trade-off. Now, if nearer sources are not that environment friendly, then with respect to carbon emission, this may violate environmental constraints or the carbon emission constraints. So we need a compromised solution, or we need an energy management solution in microgrid which compromises or which trades off the environmental objective, economic objective, and technical objective. So we'll see in the coming slides how the objectives are formulated and how it is optimized using the active power outputs as the control variables. Now, moving on to the next slide, here you can see two different things: microgrid stakeholder, and the second one is potential risk to hedge against. So the DSO has two different risks to hedge. One is load increase. So if there is a long-term load increase, then DSO has to invest on infrastructure expansion. Then supply interruption, because reliability is DSO's responsibility. Technical feasibility is DSO's responsibility. So that is also his risk. Then end consumer. End consumer has supply interruption risk because it affects the reliability again. Then price volatility. If the price is high, then it's a risk. It's risky for the end consumer. Then for the energy supplier, high price supplier. So these are basically the risks to be hedged by the different microgrid stakeholders. We will see how they are going to hedge these potential risks. Now, microgrid versus virtual power plant. You might have heard of these two terms, microgrid and virtual power plant. We'll see the conceptual differences first. Then we will move on to a numerical which explains how is the stakeholders' benefit different when we convert a microgrid to a virtual power plant or a virtual grid, how the distributed. Now, in the first figure, you can see the retailer has connection with the wholesale market, and the local load has direct link with the retailer. So the local load buys power from the retailer only, but the retailer always buys power from the wholesale market. But here in the second case is a microgrid and first case is a virtual power plant. In the second figure, you can see that retail market has direct involvement with the distributed energy resources, and this is probably the same structure of the centralized markets, because double-sided auctions are going on here. Distributed energy resources are submitting offers, and end consumers are submitting their bids to the third party in the retail market, and through the retail market the transaction is going on. But the wholesale market has only transactions with aggregator or retailer here. Here you can see always the power should come through wholesale market to the local load. Directly it cannot be purchased from the retailer through the DER. It should always come through the wholesale market. So between the aggregator and the retailer, another entity has come here, which is the wholesale market. Here from the retailer, local load directly, it supplies the local load directly. So because of this additional entity, the benefits are also shared. So we are expecting less benefits in a virtual power plant when compared to the microgrid. Now, one of the numericals which was asked for the end semester examination for this power system restructuring and pricing course for MTech power systems will be discussed by my student, Ms. Jisma. I will hand over to her. Jisma?
Yes,
I have made you a presenter. You can share.
Yes, thank you.
It's coming. Yeah, you can start.
So this is a numerical example consisting of a microgrid operator, a microsource, end consumer, and energy market as the different entities of a microgrid business case, where the following are the prices and quantities of energy transaction. That is, end consumer are in need of 100 kilowatt hour of energy, and the rate at which it gets the energy is 3 rupees. Similarly, energy market transaction prices 2 rupees, and microsources microsource will get a price of amount of 1 rupees per kilowatt hour. So this 100 kilowatt hour of energy of end consumer is getting from energy market and microsources like this 30 plus 70. The question is, find the cash and energy flows of the different entities, find the profit of each entity, and how this cash and energy flow as well as profit differs if the business model transformed to a VPP with energy retailer as an additional intermediary. Let us first case with microgrid business case. So these are the three. This is the end consumer who is in need of 100 kilowatt hour of energy. He purchases at 3 rupees per kilowatt hour. So the total expense is 300 rupees, which is given to the microgrid operator. Microgrid operator is the one who manages the energy as well as financial transactions. Now, this microgrid operator gets this 100 kilowatt of energy from energy market and the microsources. So 70 kilowatt hour of energy is getting from microsources at a rate of 1 rupees per kilowatt hour. So microgrid operator is having an expense of rupees 70. Similarly, microgrid operator is getting energy from energy market at the transaction price of 2 rupees per kilowatt hour. So that costs an additional 60 rupees when buying from energy market. So the total expense incurred by the microgrid operator is 70 plus 60, which is 130. And the total revenue is 300. So the profit is revenue minus expense, which is 170 rupees. Here, this profit of this microgrid operator is 170 rupees. Now, we will consider another business case. It is VPP, virtual power plant business case, wherein energy retailer is the one who is dealing with the end consumer and energy market, and an additional VPP, virtual power plant operator, who communicates with the micro sources. That means this VPP operator manages the transactions among from microsources, and it communicates to with the energy market. So the rates remaining the same. Here 3 rupees, 1 rupee, and 2 rupees. The rates are remaining the same. Let us calculate the cash flow and energy flow. So again, the end consumer are in need of 100 kilowatt hour of energy, and they purchase at 3. So the energy retailer gets 300 rupees from end consumer. This energy retailer can only buy from energy market. So the entire 100 kilowatt hour should be purchased from energy market at the rate of 2 rupees per kilowatt hour. So energy retailer should, the expense of energy retailer is 200 rupees. So that makes the profit of energy retailer as 100. Now this microsources will sell the energy to energy market via VPP operator at a rate of 1 rupees. So microgrid sources will sell the energy 70 kilowatt hour of energy and earns 70 rupees, and a VPP operator make a transaction with energy market at rupees 2 rupees per kilowatt hour and earns 140 rupees by selling 70 kilowatt hour of energy. So the VPP operator gets a profit of 140 minus 70, which is 70. So now the if you see the total profit, it is 100 plus 70, which is 170. But that profit is divided among two intermediaries. So this is the this is the basic difference between the two business cases. Okay, now I'll hand over to Dr. Vivek Mohan.
Jisma, you can stop share and assign me as the presenter.
Okay. Yes, yes.
Yeah. Is it visible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So that's the basic concept of virtual power plant and microgrid. From the numerical, we have seen that the profit is distributed in the case of virtual power plant when compared to the microgrid. Now we'll see the importance of technical and commercial VPP. You can see that in the first, you have, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
Is it visible?
Maybe as a presenter, is there any problem?
Nothing. I hope it is visible.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay. So, are you able to hear?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, in a commercial VPP, the objective is more of economic in nature when compared to a technical VPP. In a technical VPP, we have network objectives as prime priority. So you can see in the first figure, the maximum line carrying capacity in the line which connects the local node to the grid connection point is 100 kVA. So the line is now 150% overloaded. In the commercial VPP, the line is now 150% overloaded. Now in the technical VPP, you can see that the local generation is here what happens is already there is excess generation, and because of the profit motive and the higher grid price of 0.15 euros per kilowatt hour when compared to 0.1 euros per kilowatt hour of local generation cost, the local entity wants to pump more power to the grid and earn more. So in that case, the line is overloaded by 150%. But in the second case, it's a technical VPP. The objective is a bit different. So network quality has more preference here, and hence the local generation is brought down to or stepped down to a lower level, and now the line is only 90% overloaded. But of course, we have to see the line loading margins to satisfy the basic constraint. But even though if it is inside the limits, allowable limits, within the allowable limits, the local entity tries to earn more or maximize his profit in a commercial VPP. So the basic network quality guideline will be provided from the policy maker or the utility. So within that constraint, he is trying to maximize his profit in a commercial VPP. We'll see more of this in the coming slides. Now, network services in microgrids, including V2G and G2V. Provision of network services. So the first figure which is shown here, it shows the conventional grid structure where power is flowing from the high voltage to low voltage side always, and technical services are provided by the generating stations. Now, the distribution system is completely managed by the DSO or the distribution system operator, and the transmission system is completely managed by the TSO or the transmission system operator. Now, when the distribution system becomes active, what happens is technical services or network services can be provided from the MV level and LV levels also by use of local energy sources. But it's difficult to identify the sources which participate in network services, because we have to incentivize them or we have to penalize them according to how they contribute to the network quality. So to identify them, identifying them is a difficult process. So in many of the papers, the assumption is that the technical services that is provided at a particular voltage level is limited to that voltage level only. But that is just theoretical. That is just an assumption. You know that you can have power pumped from the low voltage level, which goes to the MV level also, which improves the network quality of the MV level also. That is possible. So we cannot just restrict them to one particular voltage level. So for this, we need some market frameworks and TSO-DSO interaction models for implementing this properly. So this is one research area in which many of the researchers are working. We'll see how the network services are provided in a simplified manner. So here in the first figure, the first two figures show the load reduction, peak shaving by load reduction, and the second example shows the peak shaving by generation reduction. So in the first case, we have a parking lot here in which some n number of electric vehicles are there, but the parking lot is now not connected to the network. It is taken out from the network as of now. So we have a 15 kilowatts local load demand here, and 10 kVA is the line carrying capacity here. So if this 15 kilowatts is taken from the grid, then of course this is 150% overloaded. See, we are comparing kilowatts and kVA here. Of course, we are assuming that it's a unity power factor case, because that is not important here. That's why we are not emphasizing on that now. That's why. Okay, so this is 150% overloaded. So what we can do here is you can have some discharging electric vehicles. Some number of electric vehicles can be connected to the parking lot can be connected to the grid in a controlled manner, and 6 kilowatts can be locally supplied. So 9 kilowatts is what is required from the grid. So this is now 90% loaded. So basically peak shaving happens here by means of load reduction. Load reduction in the sense when we are looking from the grid side, the net load is reduced in the second case, right? The net load is 15 minus 6, which is 9 kilowatts in the second case. Earlier it was 15 minus 0, which was 15 itself. Now peak shaving example 2 by means of generation reduction is shown. Here excess power is generated from the local generator, or the this can be any generator. Here it is shown as electric vehicle discharging, that's all. It can be any storage device or any local generator, but of course charging is only possible if it is a storage device. You just assume it as a distributed energy resource, that's all. So initially we have 1 kilowatt load here, and 15 kilowatts is the generation from the discharging electric vehicles. So 14 is the excess, and 14, so 140% is overloaded. This line is 140% overloaded, and it is pumped to the grid. Now we are reducing this generation. We are switching off, or we are isolating some of the electric vehicles, discharging electric vehicles, and we have made it 10 kilowatts now. So this is again 90% overloaded. So if 10% margin is there for overloading, then it is satisfied now. That is how this peak shaving service is, network service is provided by the electric vehicle owners. Of course, it may not be individually done. It may be possible only with a pool of electric vehicles in a parking lot. If it is an apartment or so, we can have a number of electric vehicles, so that the generation can be the considerable size, a sizable generation can be, sizable local generation can be provided. Now, voltage regulation service. Coming to the voltage regulation service, the first example is load reduction. So again, plus or minus 10% tolerance limit is provided, and the line parameters are shown here, resistance and reactance values. So initially the local load is 500 kilowatts. 100 kilowatts is only provided from the parking lot, electric vehicle parking lot, by means of discharging. See, in this parking lot, some electric vehicles can be in discharging mode and mode. So we are about the net power injection from the parking lot. Okay, so 100 is provided from here, and 400 has to come from the grid. As 400 is coming from the grid, the voltage profile of the local node is now I mean, it is having a bad profile. It is 86.1%, which is not under the 10% tolerance limit, which is outside the tolerance limit. Now we are going for reactive power control. So if the inverter is connected or the power electronic interface is connected at this particular parking lot is capable of reactive power control, then we can have some reactive power injection from the local parking lot. So now 200 kVAr is injected from the parking lot. So the voltage profile has improved to 88.6%. Because 200 kVAr is a local reactive power demand. It is completely supplied by the parking lot here. But still we know that it is not in the tolerance limit. It's outside the tolerance limit. So now we are going for active power control. So some more electric vehicles are connected now for discharging. So it is now increased from 100 kilowatts to 200 kilowatts. So now it has become, the voltage profile has become 91.8%, and it is well within the tolerance limit. Now, this is a second example for voltage. Excess power is there in the local system. So power is pumped to the grid. So the direction of power has been reversed. So you can see here from the parking lot, 700 kilowatts is the total generation and 50 kilowatts is the local load. So 700 minus 50 is 650, and it is pumped to the grid. So higher voltage is here and lower voltage is here, obviously. Now we are going for reactive power control. So in here what we need is reactive power consumption from the parking lot side. So the power electronic interface at this particular, or the inverter at this particular parking lot should be able to operate in lagging reactive power mode. So minus 200 kVAr. So 200 kVAr's consumption is there from this point to reduce the voltage profile at this particular local node. So from 114.1%, it has now become 112.2%. Now again, we are going for active power control. So from 700 kilowatts to 500 kilowatts. So some more discharging electric vehicles are taken out from, isolated, so that the active power generation is reduced. So now it is in 108.2%, which is well inside the 110% limit. So that is what is a voltage regulation service. So in all these cases, now the local load owner or the local EV owner or local distributed energy resource owner is also becoming a stakeholder, and he is being incentivized for providing this network quality, this service, this network service. Now, reliability improvement. How to improve reliability by means of local energy sources. Here 20 kVA local generation is there, 15 kVA is the local load. We have a 25 kVA load at a different node, and we have a line connected between these two nodes. This is the point of connection of the grid, and this is the farther node. So initially this is completely disconnected. The parking lot is completely disconnected. So the total load is 25 plus 15, which is 40 kVA. 20 kVA is provided locally, and remaining is coming from the grid. Now, when we are going for islanding mode, this is full islanding. We'll see partial islanding also. In full islanding, you know that the load demand is same, 25 plus 15, which is 40. Now this is being connected. This parking lot is being connected, and the total capacity of this parking lot is 30 kVA. This capacity might have, they might have announced it before the real-time horizon itself, maybe 1 hour or 1 day before itself. They might have announced that at the event of islanding, we are ready to provide this much capacity from this particular apartment parking lot. So out of 30, how much is used here? 25 plus 15 is 40, 20 is coming from here, 20 will come from here. So again, the local generation demand balance is satisfied. So then we'll go for partial islanding. How is partial islanding done? This region is completely switched off, and this is only worked because this is only operated. Because if we see, if 15 kVA is produced from here, and 15 is the load, then if some charging electric vehicles are here, then this source is not able to feed the charging electric vehicles at this particular point. That will not be possible. So then in that case, this switch can be opened, and we can go for partial islanding. So reliability enhancement services can also be given by the distributed energy resources. Now, frequency regulation service, the EV owners opportunity. So while buying an electric vehicle for V2G service, what should we keep in mind before buying an EV? We'll see the complete economics of EV, whether it is beneficial or not. So the annual, if we are using this electric vehicle for frequency regulation, then the cost model is like the annual revenue from frequency regulation service is R equals PR frequency into P megawatts into A. So PR frequency is the frequency regulation price, which is in dollars per megawatt hour. And P megawatts is the power capacity in megawatts. So the capacity we have to announce prior to the time horizon, the real time horizon itself. And A is the number of hours. That is availability to provide this vehicle to grid services in hours. So basically dollars per megawatt hour into megawatt gives dollars per hour into hour gives dollars itself. So this is the annual revenue. Now let us assume that a Nissan Leaf owner in the PJM interconnection. PJM interconnection is the largest grid in the world, operating roughly from Chicago to New Jersey, which is Pennsylvania, New Jersey and Maryland interconnection. If he is participating in the frequency regulation service using their home charger, assuming the use of level 2 charger, let us assume that the capacity for this Nissan Leaf owner is 10 kilowatts. So it is evident that they are not committing the complete capacity, right? Because I think it's around 40 kilowatts. Around 40 kilowatts is the total capacity of the Nissan Leaf, and 60 kilowatts is the total capacity of Nissan Leaf Plus. But almost 25% is only committed for frequency regulation service. So it's practical, more of practical. So basically it's 0.01 megawatts. Next, acknowledging that there would be additional revenue if there was also a work charger, because he is going for work in the morning, and if he comes back to home at night, and at night he is using his vehicle for frequency regulation service. Now, in addition, he can go for work charger also. Okay, but as of now, we are not assuming that. We assume that the EV is available to provide V2G services only at home for 15 hours during weekdays and 23 hours during weekends, adding up to about 6,300 hours per year. That means almost 72% of the total time of the year. That means this is 6,300 hours. Finally, the average price for frequency regulation in PJM was $34 per megawatt hour, according to the ancillary service price or whatever be the market framework. Based on that, the ancillary service, the average price for frequency regulation service is $34 per megawatt hour. Now we'll see the calculation. So as per equation 1, the annual revenue that our hypothetical Nissan Leaf owner can earn is $2,140, though a portion of this revenue would likely go to an aggregator, because aggregator is a third party here. He facilitates this particular service, so he will be paid, a proportion of this will be paid to him. Now, adding a V2G capable charger at work also, in office also he is adding a V2G charger, but of course there is infrastructure cost for that. We'll see that. Then it increases the annual revenue by about $600 per year, which may be cost effective for the owner to invest in. Thus, depending on the time frame, V2G revenues can add up to tens of thousands of dollars over the lifespan of a vehicle. For example, the 2018 Nissan Leaf costs a consumer in the USA as low as $22,490 after federal tax rebates. So in theory, it would take only 10.5 years for an owner to recapture this particular expense, not accounting for other benefits of EV ownership. Because the entire purpose of buying an electric vehicle is for travel, right? And we have additional benefits on fuel cost savings and maintenance cost savings. But even though we neglect these things, the benefit of travel cannot be completely converted, completely quantified in terms of money. but it is there, right? It is there. So without that also, the EV owner is able to recapture the amount within 10.5 years. So this is a valuable proposition, or he can go for buying an electric vehicle if such facilities and provisions are there. So it depends on the regulator's policy also. If such a policy is there, then it becomes a valuable proposition. So frequency regulation prices, but there are uncertainties in this particular return, because the frequency regulation prices are variable over time, and the grid quality is also variable over time. So every time they don't need a frequency regulation service. Of course, capacity charge they will get, because if you commit some some capacity for frequency regulation service prior to the actual dispatch itself, you will get that money. So based on that, based on the capacity committed, you will get the capacity charge. But the energy cost, the actual energy that is dispatched for frequency regulation, based on that, you will get the energy cost. So this calculation is just based on capacity cost. Now, figure shows that the total revenues of a V2G owner providing frequency regulation over 16 years in the 5 electricity grid operators in USA, where total revenues can range from just under $1 to $20,000 to over $45,000. So you can see variations in different markets, different market frameworks in terms of, when you compare the net regional revenue from the frequency regulation service by means of V2G activity. This is because there is variation in price, there is uncertainty in availability of the vehicle in the parking lot. We are not sure, even if we are committing that our vehicle will be available at that particular period, we are not sure whether it will be available at that particular time. Then even if we are available at that particular time, because of unexpected travel, the state of charge may be different. It may be less. So based on these things, your revenue varies. But even though it varies, you can see here that the lowest amount itself is above, around $20,000. So the variation in frequency regulation price, variation in power capacity, and variation in EV, uncertainty in EV availability. Frequency regulation price may vary significantly over time, hence relatively large error bars in the figure. That is why we are getting the relatively large error bars in the figure. At the same time, power capacity and EV fleet availability can be increased, which both will increase the revenue potential. Either way, and depending on the time frame, the potential of V2G to reduce the cost of ownership over the lifespan of the vehicle could be quite enormous. So this is becoming a valuable proposition. Applying a discount rate of 5% to V2G revenues, because we have already said that, and one thing, no, actually we have neglected the percentage we give to the aggregator. So that has to be considered here, but that may be some 5% to 10%. Even though that expense is there, the revenue is considerable. Now, applying a discount rate of 5% to V2G revenues, we can calculate that in our example above. The net present value of V2G to our hypothetical Nissan Leaf owner over 16 years would be $23,000. Whereas undiscounted, it would be $34,000, but this is not practical. We have to do discounted cash flow and find the net present value. Still, when discounted, the potential revenues of V2G are quite substantial, even in comparison with the capital cost of the EV. What was the capital cost of EV? We have already mentioned that it is 22,490. So at present, the upfront cost for buying the electric vehicle is 22,490. If that includes the charging infrastructure cost also. So maybe if you are adding the charging infrastructure cost, it can become some $30,000, suppose. Even though it is $30,000, you are getting back $23,000 after 16 years. Now, energy and cash flow under arbitration. So we have seen different network services that can be provided by the distributed energy resources. We have seen that how electric vehicle owners can contribute to network services. And now we are moving to cash flow under arbitration. So here, again, the we have a third party. The third party buys power from the local energy sources and provides this power, power that is bought from the local energy sources to the end consumers. The amount is shown here. 0.15 euros per kilowatt hour is the price for the first load. The second load, for the second load also, it is 0.15 euros per kilowatt hour. Now the total load is 70 plus 50, which is 120. You can see here in the first figure, 70 plus 50, 120 kilowatt hour is the energy demand, total energy demand. But the production here, the local production here is 250 kilowatt hours. So 250 minus 120 gives you 130, and the local network loss is 10 kilowatt hours. So 120 is backfed to the grid. So for this 120 also, the third party gets some money. He earns something for this backfeeding activity. So here we'll see what is the gross profit of the distribution system operator, how the system operator is benefited. Till now we have seen how each entity, each distributed energy resource owner is benefited. Now we'll see how the third party is benefited. So there is cash inflow and cash outflow. While pumping 120 kilowatt hours to the grid, he earns, the third party or the DSO or the aggregator or the microgrid central controller, he earns 120 kilowatt hours into 0.13 euro per kilowatt hour, which is 15.6 euro. And there is a cash outflow to the distributed energy resources because he is buying power from the distributed energy resources. So it is an expense for him. That is 27 euros. Right. Now, another inflow is by selling this power to the end consumers, which is 18 euros. So here you can see this 27 is the outflow and inflow is 15.6 plus 18 euros. Right. So basically we have here a gross profit of 6.6 euro. That is what is the gross profit. Now, supply and demand side players. In the supply side, we know that wholesale market is a player because upstream market is associated with the centralized market, right? So if there is a deficiency in power in the microgrid, it must be sourced from the wholesale market. So in the supply side, wholesale market is an entity. Then if there is a need of local generation demand balancing inside the microgrid itself, then micro sources can be used for local balancing, right? Then for backfeeding, if excess power is there, it can be pumped to the wholesale market, right? So wholesale market acts as a demand side player also, right? So here wholesale market acts as a supply side player as well as a demand side player. Now, in the demand side, we have regular loads, then flexible loads for demand side management and storage. So storage here, it serves the purpose of charging only because this acts as a demand side player. So it is charging only. Discharging case is not considered here. In discharging case, it acts as a micro source. Storage acts as a micro source. So these are the demand and supply side players. And we have seen what are the benefits for each of these players. Now we'll see how we can create value out of microgrid. So we have a demand side player D, we have a supply side player S. For each player, we find the profit by subtracting cost or expense from revenue. So what is the revenue for supplier side player S? What is the cost for the supplier side player generation? If he has, whether he has renewable energy source or fuel-based energy source, he has some cost for generation. So that is his expense. What is his revenue? When he gives this to the end consumer, he gets some revenue, right? So this is the profit of player S. Now, for the demand side player, by using the power that is bought or by how the load demand is used for some other purpose, because in effect he is not a commercial player, right? End consumer is not a commercial player. He is not going to make money with directly. He is not going to make money with the energy demand he has. Maybe he is running a business, so for the business he is getting. I mean, he needs power supply and he is getting it. So So his benefit can be quantified in terms of money using some other approaches, utility function approach or some other approach. Anyway, we are not going to that now, but this benefit can be quantified in terms of money. Okay. And what is his expense? He is buying power from the supplier or the retailer. So he has some expense. Minus benefit in terms of money minus expense of the player will give the player's profit. Demand side player's profit. So this is the cost of supply, right? Cost of supply in the sense, in some cases, the third party may be the owner of all the energy sources, and he may not have enough power to feed the local demand. So he may source it from outside, or he may source it from the grid. So for that extra expense is there. So that is also included here in this cost of supply. Now he has set some price for this particular energy that is sourced from different entities. To give it to the, to sell it to the, a selling price for selling this power to the end consumers. So this price minus cost is the supplier profit, right? This is what is the supplier profit, right? Now, what about the demand profit? This is the demand profit, right? Because the price that is given by the end consumer is this one, right? The benefit he obtains from the power, the load demand that is supplied is this one. So this is the demand profit. So the total benefit of the microgrid, or the total value created by the microgrid, is the sum of supplier profit plus demand profit. That is a value creation by the microgrid. So how to improve the value? How to increase the value created by the microgrid? The points which we already discussed, all those points are to be mentioned here. The policymakers' guidelines of facilitating network services, that also depends on the, that also affects the benefit or value created by the microgrid. Then the fuel prices, if fuel-based sources are there, fuel prices are there. Then the subsidy that is given by the regulator for using renewable energy sources, because we assume that dominant amount of sources in the microgrid is from renewable energy, is sourced from renewable energy. So the subsidy given for the upfront installation cost, all these things are affecting the value created by the microgrid. Now, what is our aim? How to formulate an objective to maximize the value created by the microgrid? What is our target value? Self-supply cost minus export profit. What is self-supply cost? The local demand, the cost that is incurred to supply the local demand is the self-supply cost. What is export profit? When power is exported to when excess power is exported to the grid, he gets some revenue. So this cost minus profit, that is some expense value, right? Because expense is positive here. Revenue is negative here. So the net value is cost only. That is why we have put it as a minimization problem. So minimizing this cost is our objective. Now, what are the components of self-supply cost? Import energy cost, right? To feed the local demand, the DSO may have to source from outside. So there is import energy cost for that. Then micro source generation cost. Whatever is the local source available inside, it has some generation cost. So these are the two components. Now, what is export profit? In addition to the power that is fed from the local sources, some more power is generated for exporting to the grid, right? That is what is this export sales revenue. For generating that power, some cost is there. That is what is micro source generation cost for backfed energy. Okay, that is a generation cost for that. So this is export profit. So you substitute this self-supply cost and export profit here, and you minimize this. Now, to minimize this, what is your decision variable, or what is your control variable? Your control variable is active power, because you have different sources now. Maybe EV is there, maybe solar panel is there, maybe micro wind turbine is there, fuel cell may be there, whatever. So all these active power variables are decision variables or control variables for this optimization problem, or the optimal energy management problem. Now, if your sole objective is to minimize this cost, these p values can take any value. right? We are searching p-values in a search space where the search space is infinite. That is not practical, right? So each p-value has a constraint. Each decision variable has a constraint. It has a maximum limit of generation. It has a minimum limit of generation. And if at all this is satisfied, if this limit is satisfied with all these power values, if you run the load flow inside the distribution system or microgrid, it may not be network feasible. It may violate the voltage constraint, or it may violate the line flow limits. So you have to run load flow also, or you have to check network feasibility also while optimizing the energy management energy management inside the microgrid. So this is the objective, and several constraints are there, and constraints depend on your policies or your priorities. Now, the EV challenge, certainty and uncertainty. This slide completes the EV economics part. So each block, we'll see each block. Initially, we have an upfront cost for EV, for purchasing the EV, that is a capital cost. And we have a capital cost for charging infrastructure also, but we get some subsidy from the government or the regulator for buying electric vehicle rather than going for a gasoline-based vehicle. Now, savings in emission during operation, because we are replacing the EV with we are replacing the gasoline vehicle with EV, right? So there is a saving in emission. Now, V2G revenues, we have already seen the V2G revenues. So V2G revenues, you are getting something. Then G2V cost, for regular charging, you have some expense, right? That component is falling in the G2V cost. Then carbon life cycle. See, there is no direct impact for carbon life cycle of EV, because when we buy the EV, you get some subsidy. That itself is because of this reduction in carbon emission. Based on some environmental concerns, you are given some subsidy. But in the operational phase, you don't have any savings as such. But what happens here is, you are using your electric vehicle in the distribution system where the utility depends on you for power, because your vehicle is used for V2G activity, and the utility facilitates V2G activity. So utility is using electric vehicle for energy supply, for discharging electric vehicles for energy supply. Then the utility may get some incentive for less reduced carbon emission. That can be possible. So indirectly, the utility may be benefited when you buy an electric vehicle. You are also benefited, of course, that we have already seen. Then the maintenance cost, reduction in maintenance cost is there, of course. Policy framework and aggregators preference. This we have already seen. If such a framework is not there for V2G activity, that revenue is absent. So that will affect your profitability. So it may not be a valuable proposition then. Then battery warranty. Maybe your the warranty of the battery is provided, if it is provided only for travel, because for the EV purpose, EV travel purpose only. And if warranty is cut, if you use the battery for V2G services, then that will incur some cost, because you may have to replace the battery, because it affects the battery health. So other maintenance costs and replacement costs may incur here. Then benefits over gasoline. Of course, if you replace the gasoline vehicle with the electric vehicle, you have some benefits. Then trip uncertainty and charging and discharging uncertainty. This we have already discussed. So based on this also, your profit may vary. Your revenue may vary. Now we will see this equation. So the net present cost for the electric vehicle is found out by EV cap is the capital cost for electric vehicle when it is purchased. Then EVSC cap is the capital cost for the charging infrastructure. Then you are going to you are going to find the savings actually. When you are comparing it with the gasoline based vehicle, and you are going to find the savings. So that is why minus gasoline vehicle capital cost is done here. It is subtracted from the EV cost. So this is the savings part. Okay, the first term is the savings part. Now in the second part, we have fuel cost savings when compared to the gasoline based vehicle. So this is some amount of savings. Then maintenance cost saving is there compared to the gasoline based vehicle, and battery replacement cost is there, and R is the discount rate, and Y is the lifespan of the vehicle in years. So we can find the we can evaluate the net present cost based on this, and assess whether the proposition of buying an electric vehicle is valuable or not. Now, we have already formulated the objective function. We have seen how an objective function can be formulated for solving the energy management problem. And how is what are the considerations while formulating the objective function that we'll see. If the microgrid works in economic mode, the prime objective is cost or profit itself. So the if it is a profit maximization problem, then that is objective function, right? Then if it is if the microgrid operates in environmental mode, your basic objective function has shifted from the profit to emission cost. So based on emission, you are keeping your objective as emission cost. So minimizing the emission cost here, minimizing the total operational cost, or maximizing here, minimizing the total operational cost or maximizing the total operational profit. So others remain as constraints here. See here, much importance is not given to the grid voltage deviations and other things. We are just thinking that it has to be kept in limits, that's all. Stringent limits are put for DG physical limits, distributed generator physical limits, maximum and minimum generation limits, and energy balance. Of course, this is the equality constraint. This cannot be discarded. This is a strict constraint. So these are the technical constraints, and in the objective, we have the financial objective. Now, coming to the technical mode. So see, in the technical mode, the preference is given to the network itself. It can be voltage deviation minimization. That means the nodal voltage deviation minimization, or network loss reduction, or whatever. So here they have computed one loss cost. So the amount of power that is lost in the network, it is converted to money. It is converted in terms of money, and that cost is minimized. That is objective function here. So that is a technical mode. So we have economic mode, technical mode, and environmental mode. Now, I don't think I'll be able to go to the blockchain part because it's already 3:45. By 4 o'clock, I'll finish the EV case study, then maybe have a rush through the blockchain and peer-to-peer transactive energy market part. Okay, let's see. Now, this is one example. We have a distribution microgrid here, which is of 0.4 kV voltage level. We have 3 feeders. The first one is a residential feeder, and the second one is an industrial feeder, and the third one is a commercial feeder. And in a table, the EV schedule is given. So at different times, the location of EV at different times during a day is given here. But we are not sure. This is just this information is just obtained from the smart parking lots. Smart parking lot in the sense, when the vehicle comes into the parking lot, it is a kind of digital login, and when the vehicle goes out of the parking lot, it's a digital logout. So if it is automated, then and if the information on the state of charge and number of electric vehicles available in a parking lot is digitally available in cloud, then all these are automated. So in that case, prior to the actual or real-time horizon itself, from the parking lot, this information is given to the operator. How many electric vehicles would be there, and what is the expected amount of energy that can be provided by the parking lot. So we have local energy sources here: wind, solar, then micro turbine, diesel generator, and fuel cell. In addition, we have these electric vehicles also. So in the morning, what happens is the electric vehicles move from the residential feeder to the commercial feeder and the industrial feeder, and evening they come back. Okay, so in the daytime it is available in these nodes, and in the night time it is available here. Okay, now we'll see how to formulate the objective function and how to optimize the energy management problem. So what is the expense of aggregator here? Aggregator is a third party. Aggregator purchases power from the conventional distributed energy resources. Conventional distributed energy resources means fuel-based energy resources. So there is a cost of purchase for that, right? So that is part of expense. That is a component of expense. Then cost of purchase from renewable energy sources, right? Cost of purchase from renewable energy sources plus cost of purchase from the grid. So in addition, he is buying from the grid. Okay. Now, if he is not buying from the grid, then he may be selling it to the grid. If he is selling it to the grid, it goes to the revenue part. This will be zero. This component will go as zero. Then amount given for load curtailment. For load curtailment, the curtailable load owners are incentivized. So that is also an expense from the aggregator part. Then amount given to the discharging areas. So the sum of these things, these components give you the expense of the aggregator. Now, how to find the revenue of the aggregator? So, of course, you can see here expense of the aggregator is a function of power. What are these active power variables? The conventional distributed energy resource. What is the power? I mean, the power dispatched from the conventional distributed energy resource. If 3 distributed energy resources are there, then here itself we have P1, P2, P3. Okay. Now, cost of purchase from renewable energy sources. If 2 renewable energy sources are there, then P4 and P5. Okay. So this P is basically a vector having different elements. Okay, so if n number of decision variables are there, this function is, this is a function of the expense, is a function of n number of variables. Here also, revenue is also a function of n number of variables. It's the other side of the coin, because earning from the sale of power purchased from the grid. Already power is purchased from the grid and it is sold to the end consumers. So for that, some revenue is there. Then earning from sale of power purchased from distributed energy resources. Earning from sale of power purchased from renewable energy sources. Earning from sale of power purchased from discharging areas. See, why we are not considering all these as a single term? We have segregated everything. What is the reason for this? Because of these terms, some are certain, some are uncertain. See, we know that from a dispatchable source, the active power output that is expected, prior to the real-time horizon, that is deterministic, right? It has no uncertainty. But we have a lot of distributed, renewable energy sources, local renewable energy sources in the grid, in the microgrid, and also we have also electric vehicles in the microgrid. Electric vehicles have both temporal and spatial uncertainty. Because if we expect an electric vehicle at a particular node, it may not be available at that particular node at that particular time. So that is spatial uncertainty. Temporal uncertainty is there. At a particular time, you are expecting some electric vehicle, it is not available at that particular time. Or at a particular time, you are expecting some state of charge that is not, the state of charge is not that much. So these are some uncertainties from the, so basically the active power output itself is a random variable. So now the problem is, initially we thought that from dispatchable energy sources or fuel-based energy sources, it is controllable, the output is controllable. So it is deterministic. But now the issue is, as the power output from the renewable energy sources are uncertain, it has to be balanced from the conventional fuel-based sources, right? So in effect, indirectly, that becomes a random variable. The power output from other sources are also becoming a random variable, because we have to satisfy the equality constraint, right? P generation minus P demand minus P loss equals 0. That is a equality constraint. We have to satisfy that constraint. So for that, basically this becomes a stochastic optimization problem. from deterministic optimization problem, we are slowly moving to the stochastic optimization problem. So our requirement of modeling these active power values in a probabilistic approach or an interval approach or whatever. I'm not going to the risk modeling part now, but you have to have a realistic stochastic model to optimize this particular energy management problem. And several constraints are shown here on the right side. This M is the mode of the electric vehicle. The kth the mode of the kth electric vehicle at time t. If it's in discharging mode, then if M is 0, M is -1, then it is in charging mode. So if this M is used as a multiplication factor to the nodal power injection, then sometimes -1 is multiplied. That means it's a load demand. If 0 is multiplied, there is no nodal power injection. That means it's in idle mode, right? So for each electric vehicle, it is there. A variable k is introduced here. This is for kth electric vehicle. That is why the sigma is here. N number of electric vehicles are there at a particular time. So for each time interval, if it is hourly, then hourly profit is optimized. This is what? Maximizing profit. Profit revenue of P minus expense of P. So this is how we maximize the profit. Now, going to the energy blockchain and peer-to-peer transactive energy markets, I'll just go through it. I will try to wind up by 4:10. Okay, so coming to the blockchain, what is the meaning of the term blockchain? Blockchain basically enables movement of digital coins from one individual to another individual. So the initial problem addressed by the blockchain was money transfer. If a person wants to transfer money from one country to another country, he first orders this transaction with the bank. Bank is third party, and the third party facilitates the transaction, and maybe after 1 or 2 days, the receiver will get or the beneficiary will get the money, right? So there is a third party there. Now, how it is used, we'll see. So a person A from Israel wants to transfer money to a person B in Japan. So there is a trusted third party, it may be the bank. So he orders and he wants to transfer $4 to the person in Japan. So it takes some time. The accounts are identified. Then $4 is transferred, but $5 is the expense from the person A because $1 is taken as the service charge by the third party. Okay, so the basic solution that is given by the blockchain is that the first one is removal of this third party, and the second thing is making this transaction process faster. So it now takes maybe 1 to 2 days or 24 hours. So it makes faster. The blockchain technology makes it faster, and the reduction of this service charge. So when the trusted third party is removed, then of course this service charge is removed, right? So blockchain enables 2 to 3. It enables now 2 to 3 days to immediate transfer. Then now it is cheaper than without a trusted third party. How to achieve this? So for achieving this, what we need to do is that each transaction should be validated. Earlier, this role was taken by the bank or the third party. Now it has to be collectively done, otherwise it's not secure. Because if one person is given responsibility to do it, we don't know whether it is secure or not. He may do something, he may jeopardize the system. So we are not sure about it. So what we do is we make an open ledger or a public ledger. That means everyone has the document on all transactions, whether it is between A and B. The person C also has this information about the transaction between A and B. So for every transaction is validated in a collective manner. I'm not going to the finer details because there are finer differences between consensus and validation. These things are there, but I'm just going through the fundamentals of blockchain. That's all. Now, how is the open ledger working? So $10 is available with person A in his wallet. He is transferring $5 to B. So first he broadcasts that he is going to transfer this $5 to B. So it is reflected. This transaction is reflected in the open ledger, so it is available. This information is available to everyone now. This information is available to everyone. So everybody knows that $5 is being transferred, and currently A has only $5 in his wallet. Earlier it was 10, right? $5 in his wallet. But there is only one copy of ledger. If there is only one copy of ledger, then if that is tampered, then everything is tampered. So if you have to have a collective opinion, this should be a distributed ledger. It need not, in addition to the open ledger technology, we should have a distributed ledger technology also, because the copy of ledger should be there for each subscriber, A, B, C, and D. So from open ledger, we are going to distributed ledger. So in open ledger, he can say that after, A is broadcasting that he is transferring $15 to C, right? $15 to C, but he has only $5. So this is not a valid transaction. So the validity of the transaction should be, it should be validated in a collective manner. Okay. Now we'll see the distributed ledger. So everyone participating in the network can hold their own ledger and can hold the chain of events. So multiple transactions are made to a block, and different blocks are connected to make a blockchain. So we need to verify whether individual copies are same and synchronized. That is the most important thing here. We cannot just broadcast that I cannot just broadcast that I am going to transfer $15. I have only $5 in my wallet. But people know that because it's a distributed ledger. It's a public ledger. It's accessible to everyone. So this cannot be a valid transaction. If everyone validates it, then only it becomes a valid transaction. So there are different ways of validating the transaction also. So we are going to apply this technology for energy transactions. I'm skipping this slide. I'm going to P2P energy transactive markets. So peer-to-peer trading comes when in a community or a distribution system or a active distribution system or a distribution microgrid, if multiple prosumers are there, and if they want to transact energy between them, then that is what the name suggests, peer-to-peer transaction. Two peers can transact energy among them, between themselves. So each transaction should be validated. Right. If you have smart meters at home, the smart meters capture the energy consumption and the net energy, that is net energy consumption, not energy consumption, net energy consumption. Some amount of power is pumped to the grid, and remaining amount is, it is to feed their local load demand. Right. He has his own generation also. So basically from the smart meter, the information can be pushed to the cloud. So based on the net energy consumption, he has to be given charges, right? The transactive charges. So who is the seller? Who is the buyer? This has to be identified properly. Then the transaction should be automated. Both the energy and financial transaction should be automated. And finally, after the transaction period, you should observe that in your wallet, whatever amount is there, that reflects the actual energy that is transmitted by you, or the net energy that is transmitted by you. So in the conventional energy market, we have a bidding process, right? If I am a buyer, I submit bid to the third party. If somebody else is a seller, he submits the offer to the third party, and the third party arrives at a market clearing price at which the transaction happens. Here in this case, two peers can directly arrive at an agreement or arrive at a common price, and they can transact between themselves. But the process is automated using blockchain. So the removal of third party, the effect of removal of third party comes here as maybe the effect of removal of utility, okay, or the DSO or the aggregator. There is no aggregator, there is no third party. The trusted third party is removed, and based on collective agreements, power transactions are done. That is what is done. Now, I have just, gone through the blockchain and P2P markets in a very peripheral manner. We'll go to the summary, and I will wind up. It's already 4 o'clock. So the different microgrid aspects we have seen, economic or whether microgrid is cost effective or economic, then what are the technical or network services that can be provided by the different stakeholders of the microgrid, then how they are benefited, then what is V2G activity and G2G activity, and whether buying an electric vehicle for different purposes is a valuable proposition or not. Then smart and automated transactive energy markets can be materialized in a microgrid using the technology of blockchain. Then the microgrid should be environmental friendly also based on the emission costs. So by this, I am going to these are the references. Thank you very much. If you have any queries, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your very detailed and informative session on microgrid economics, local energy markets. You have given a clear insight on topics, misconceptions in microgrid, local energy market frameworks, microgrid versus virtual power plant, network services in microgrid including vehicle to grid and grid to vehicle, objective formulation for microgrid optimal planning, P2P transactive energy markets, and blockchain. The session is now open for discussions. I would now read out the queries posted by the participants. Sir, here one first question is there. When do you think the EV subsidy and the policy framework come into existence in India?
EV subsidy is already there in India, but it's in a marginal, level only. Of course, in the upfront cost, you can get it. I think it's, I don't know the percentage, but for two-wheeler, it is different. That is why people are moving towards this Nexon EV and Ather scooters nowadays. The main barrier is the availability of charging stations and the range anxiety. I feel that is those are the main challenges we face now. Subsidy is already there.
Thank you for that answer, sir. The one more question asked by another participant. How will electric vehicles change the load curve?
See, electric vehicle batteries can be used for V2G and G2G activities so that the peak can be shifted. If you have a peak load peak load demand period, then what you can do is some of the charging electric vehicles can be disconnected. So if it actually acts as demand side management it actually acts as flexible load. So peak shaving, we have already shown an example of peak shaving. So this shaved peak, it should be compensated somewhere, right? Some other time it should be compensated. So it's basically peak shifting. Peak shaving can be also done, but both can be done using electric vehicle charging and discharging activities. But of course, the barrier there is certainty itself, because we don't have a certainty in availability of electric vehicles and the level of state of charge.
Yeah, another question from the same participant. Do the domestic loads get charged for the consumption of reactive power for the electricity bill by the utility companies?
No, it is not done. I don't know in some other countries whether it is done or not. Here it is not done. For industrial consumers, it is done. Here it is not done. If you are charged for KVA, then only KVAR is included, right? So, as far as I know, it is not done in India.
Okay, sir. One general question also posted. What is the purpose of phase lock loop in a microgrid?
I think that is out of scope of this presentation, but I feel phase lock loop is used to measure the microgrid frequency at the inverter terminals and to facilitate regulation services of the inverter. Facilitate regulation of the inverter phase relative to the microgrid. That can be done. That may be the purpose. I don't know exactly. That may be the purpose.
Okay, sir. Another question. Which IEEE standards are generally used for designing the microgrids and electric vehicles?
Many are there. That requires some, referring because see, as far as this presentation is concerned, all my works are done in SIGRE LV benchmark microgrid. That is also used as one of the benchmark systems for these studies, analysis studies, static tool studies. So that is what I have used. IEEE standard systems are also there, and some IEEE standard distribution systems are there. What some researchers do is that they add some active sources to the existing standard distribution system, and they will do the study. That is also possible.
A couple of more questions also there, sir. Shall I continue?
Yeah, maybe I can take 3 to 4 questions more. Yeah.
Meenakshi asking, does a ledger implies a database?
Ledger implies a database. That is right, because different blockchain technologies, keeping the ledger as distributed and open. This is done differently. Maybe the platform differs, but it is basically a database. See, for maybe in, I think Ethereum uses Solidity as the programming language. Bitcoin basically is derived. So see, the way in which we implement the logic, that differs, but it is basically the database only. All the transactions will be recorded in real time, and without validating the previous transaction, the new transaction cannot happen. That is basically the thing. And collective agreement should be there for validation of a transaction. That is without a trusted third party. That is what, if the third party is removed, then collective agreement should be there, right? They have to be in consensus among themselves to validate the transaction. That is what.
Suman Sharma is asking, how to model multiple uncertainties in peer-to-peer decentralized framework?
Multiple uncertainties can be, it's a broad area actually. See, I'll give you one example. If you are modeling multiple variables, multiple random variables using interval arithmetic, suppose, then you have a variable X, you have a variable Y. X is suppose your active power, and Y is your reactive power, suppose. Then you don't have a certain idea about, you don't have a certainty on what value X will take. You only have an idea of that X will take a range of values, Y will take another range of values. Then X can be represented in terms of X min and X max, and Y can be represented in terms of Y min and Y max. So both are now intervals. But we need to apply this in different equations for arithmetic operations. So doing these arithmetic operations can be through interval arithmetic. Instead of just adding two numbers, subtracting two numbers, multiplying two numbers, in contrast to this, we will multiply two intervals, you will add two intervals, you will subtract two intervals. So your answer will be also an interval. So if you do an optimization problem, if suppose you are, like what I said, if your objective is profit maximization, your final maximum profit will be a range only. Profit min and profit max will be there with you. So you only be able to say that I will get an optimal profit in this particular range. And if you want to capture the statistical data also, you may draw a probability distribution curve between this profit max and profit min. Suppose your profit min is 3, profit max is 8. Between 3 and 8, any value can be taken by the profit variable. So you can draw a probability distribution curve for this profit variable, so that you can know which values are highly probable and which values are less probable to be taken by the profit variable or any other random variable. I just gave an example, that's all. This is one example. Many other approaches are there.